I hope you're doing great out there. Today's episode, we're going to talk about grief as a teacher. And grief doesn't just ask us to remember what we lost, it asks us who we are becoming. If you are walking through a season of loss, like we all are, or supporting someone who is, this conversation is a compassionate mirror for your journey. We talk about grief as medicine, how loss can break us open to new ways of being. The power, and we talk about the power of plant diets. If you don't know what a plant diet is, it's when you diet a certain plant to receive the teachings and intelligence of that plant. We talk about how sacred plant traditions provide a container for processing what words cannot. They really drop us into our hearts and into deep feelings, is what we need to move through grief. We also talk about ritual and community, why we aren't meant to carry the heavy lifting of mourning alone. Ancient traditions, they the whole tribe comes out to hold people in grief, and we really need to get to a place in this society where we ask for help. Ancestral healing is about reconnecting with those who came before us to find renewal. And a lot of that can be found in the grief work. And so please join me for this beautiful conversation with Rose Miller, who has so much advice for any of us and all of us who carry grief in our hearts.
I think community grief should a beautiful thing is grief being held in community. In so many cultures, that's how they honor and process grief. And I think 100% that's what such big medicine because being surrounded with people who can understand the depths that you're experiencing helps you feel a little more normal and you can receive tools and just hearing how others process and work through it and breath is so powerful because we store our grief in our lungs and so accessing that. I want to be sharing with movement and grief because dance has been my medicine through it. But even singing, I've noticed getting back into your voice and connecting your voice and your heart, I've noticed is really powerful.
Rose, welcome to Cura Medicina.
Hey, hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I love you so much.
I know, I can't wait to hug you
Mm,
soon.
yeah. Um, Yeah, let's start with a little bit about your journey. Just tell us, what you want to tell us about how you got to be here today.
Yeah, well, we've met through the medicine work and I was seeking just support in my life. I always carried the belief something was wrong with me. And
Mm,
looking back now, it was all of my unprocessed grief and all of
mm.
nothing I attended to. And then I found the medicine, Aya, and that kind of set me on my path. Grief has been one of my greatest teachers, and that's when I found the medicine is to help me through that. And I know we relate in that sense. I was in college trying to cope and partying with the loss of my boyfriend, and I was like, "Okay, I need something else." So,
Yeah, and you've also done a dieta in Peru, have you
yeah,
not?
we're
Yeah.
done 4 dietas now.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my first dieta was after I lost my brother to suicide, back in 2018, and my youngest brother and I went to Peru to do, a dieta, and that one, it was with Bob and sauna and, of course, just cracked me open. Yeah, dear Bob and sauna, and that one kind of really shifted my entire way of being. Um, I learned so many tools to focus on my self-care and came out of there a new person, like the medicine does.
Yeah, Bobanzana. Yeah, I've also done 2 Bobanzana diets, and I feel like it's a beautiful plant to start with because, as we'll talk about in this podcast, we all have grief somewhere.
Mhm.
There's some grief that we carry, some of us more than others, and I just feel like Bobensan is such a beautiful way to enter this work.
Mhm.
And yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about, I mean, especially doing it with your brother, that's amazing. What what did she bring you and how did you dance with her in that dieta?
I remember my first time sitting with the medicine, I had just been searching. I thought someone else would be able to heal me. I'm like, I need someone to heal me. I need help. And then my first journey, it was like me just staring back at myself the whole time, and I was just saying, "You are your medicine. You are your medicine." And I remember just laying there looking at myself and just hearing, "You are your medicine." And then I just like felt the most beautiful journey. It was like what brought me in tears, and then I was just laughing and I was like hysterical. I was just experiencing the full range. I
So
remember my
good.
father was like, "Wow." He held it so strong, and I was just on one, just experiencing it fully. Um, and yeah, I just remember feeling like the depths of love and then the depths of life and that balance. And then of course at the end I was up dancing with it. Um, but it was a rough one. I hadn't very been listening to my body. My diet wasn't how it is now. I was still just getting into this world and this work. And so definitely a lot of working through that with my diet and my past choices and all the things. So it's a real
Yeah,
cleansing.
beautiful reminders. And then your other diets, which plants did you diet?
I did chuchuwasi, wakapu, and is it renikia?
Renikia, yeah.
Yeah, I always get it mixed up with the Dieta center called
Hmm,
Renkia. So,
hmm.
and then I did Yarapanga to experience that. Have you done that?
Great. I have not, no. Yeah, and can you tell us a little bit about, maybe what each one of those did for you? Or, I know different I don't know any of those other ones, so just talk a little
Mhm.
bit about them, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so Boben's was the heart, and it really got me in my body after that journey, and it just, like, taught me self-love, and then Chuchuwasi was my second one, and that kinda gave me, like, the initiative, like, the motivation, the inspiration, and that kind of gave me more drive, like, to get out of the depths of healing. Kind of, I stayed in my grief for a while and gave it love, and then Chuchuashi kinda gave me the force to, like, get back into life. And, Renikia was more, one of my friends said she's like a tough auntie. She'll, like, kind of show you something and be like, "Do this," like so it kind of felt like that. I'm like, "Okay, this feels like something I need for sure."
I love that.
Uh-huh. And then Wakapu, it was just amazing to experience each dieta, the differences, because I feel like my first were just a lot of, like, processing, like, heaviness, and I think my Wakapu was my lightest ceremony because I was just, um I've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and then there, it just, like, unlocked my dancing to a whole other level, and that's really how I'll connect with the plants is through dance.
I know, I love that about you, yeah. We're always the ones first dancing in the ceremonies.
The best.
So good. Yeah, Wakapu, interesting because I actually sing the Wakapu song that I learned from Don William, and from what I understand, it's the hardest tree in the Amazon, right?
Mhm.
And, such a powerful tree, and not too many people talk about it. And yeah, it's beautiful that you dieted that.
Yeah, I wonder if because I did the Yarapanga, the purgative, before that dieta, so you would do it the day before you start the dieta, so I was just deep in it for 8 hours, and then, so I didn't purge the entire Wakapu ceremony, but I definitely had, like, heavy learning, and then, but it was easier for me to just, like, to work with it and to release it, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you have any advice to listeners about Dieta, because I'm a huge proponent of it, having done a few myself. What would you say to them? How has it helped transform your journey?
Mhm. My teacher Neela, she always will say that it's like your yearly doctor checkup. And I didn't go this year, and I had been consistent. And I noticed my grief was coming up more in
Mm.
different kind of ways. And so for my grief journey specifically, I go to the jungle. I'm just completely with it. And I'm just processing and feeling it so deeply that, you have the hole from grief. And I feel like when I come back from Dieta, it's filled. And so I don't go as deep in the hole when I process it or feel sad about it. After doing Dieta, I stay here and I just feel great and in acceptance and see the beauty with it. So for grief specifically, I love going to the jungle, and then it's just such a beautiful, I think it's yeah, as you know, it's just you get to go and be completely with yourself and check out from this world. And that's what I crave so much is to like be in the nature and like be removed from the phone and to be living in pureness and alignment and um yeah, so I think it just has so much to offer.
Yeah, it's such a great reminder because in Dieta, we're usually alone for, extended amount of time without any distraction. So, when we translate that into our current lives, we're so busy and there's so many things pulling on us that I think one of the most powerful things of the dieta is actually just the solitude and the fact that we are with ourselves. And when you look at our lives, that's hardly ever the case.
Yeah.
Like we're with a partner, we're with a friend, we're on social media, we're, listening to podcasts. I mean, which are all great and part of life. But,
Mhm.
I just interviewed somebody who did a 10-day Vipassana retreat and, when I think about it, the dieta is much like that because you're 10 days with yourself or longer sometimes.
Mhm.
And, but then you're communing with the plants also. So you have the support of the plants. And then obviously one of our favorite things is to be in ritual and in ceremony at the same time.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I just love the whole technology of dieta.
Mhm. I This last diet, I remember I was just, the thoughts, and then I was like, I've literally thought about every single thing in my life. This is like day 4, 3, and I'm just like, and then I got exhausted with I'm like, just I'm so overthinking, like stop. And then I finally stopped, and I would just go sit outside and just stare at butterflies for like 5 hours, and time flies by, and I'm like, wow, like this is great.
So amazing. So amazing. Yeah,
Mm.
let's pivot a little. Well, first, I before we get pivot to other topics, I'd love to hear, how I like to always hear the origin stories of how people got to ayahuasca.
Uh-huh.
So, like, tell us a little bit about, did you talk to a friend? Did you do, research on the internet? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd lost my boyfriend, and I had got a job in Nevada City, and that was my first time being in like such a beautiful community where it's tons of healers, and that was like my first time being exposed to the medicine world. And yeah, I've just felt insecure and awkward all the time. And I'm like, I need to fix something. And one of my guy friends was like, I have a lady who does women's circles. And, at that point I had tried combo and I had been getting into it and was seeing such a huge difference. And then a friend recommended Neela, and she was going to have a ladies group in Costa Rica. And then last minute, everyone canceled. So then Neela and she's like, well, I'll serve you. So just Neela and I went and did that in Costa
That's a
Rica.
cool.
It was so special. It's like, how did it happen? And we're always like, how did we stay in touch all of these years? Like, we just did. And then the next time going, my brother had heard about it through his therapist. And my brother's corporate lawyer, like not really into it, but his lawyer or his therapist after my brother was like, you should go maybe try ayahuasca. And so he called me and he's like, I want to go to the jungle. I'm like, okay. that's how that started.
Wow. So your first ayahuasca experience was also a dieta, or was
It
it
was yeah, it was just a 2-night, um,
yeah,
not a full dieta, but it was 2-night with Mila, um, yeah, and then
beautiful.
yeah, then just kept unfolding as you know.
Yeah, I've been part of that unfolding. It's been beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, now I'm touring and sitting every week, I'm like, "Great." I'm like, it feels so aligned, and I, like yeah, like
Yeah. When she calls, when we answer that call, it's a really beautiful dance for sure.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the grief and, like what happened in your life and, how you got to this place now of working with grief and helping others. And yeah, if you want to tell a little bit about that story, it'd be great.
Yeah, I'd gone through a lot of loss growing up, like, in childhood, and then my first significant was a college boyfriend, and it was just so hard and challenging because everyone was kind of in college to, like, to find themselves, to party, to live it up, and I was carrying such big debts, and I kinda had that in childhood through family things as well, and it just yeah, I just struggled so hard to relate to anyone and resorted to drinking and trying to cope with it. And then a friend recommended a channel to me, and I spoke with a channel for my first time in college. And she recommended a book, and then I found my spiritual path through
What
that.
was the book?
It was Conversations with God.
Okay,
It
great.
was my first time kind of hearing and reading all of it. I'm just like, oh my goodness. And then I always joke, I manifested. Do you know Robin Thicke?
No, I don't know who that is.
He's a singer, but back in the day, I would loved him, and I, like, randomly manifested him on my airplane after I was reading that book, and that was my first time experiencing the magic, and I'm just like, "I'm in control of my reality." And
Synchronicities.
synchronicity. And then from there, it just yeah, and from there, I was working on healing myself, and then I lost my brother to suicide when I was living in Nevada City. And that was my first time having a community come together through it, and it was not isolating at all. All the healers showed up, like the food, the nourishment, and I felt so held. And that was completely different than my first grief. I was on my own in college, just miserable and didn't understand life.
So when you say you lost your boyfriend, he actually died? Is that
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He
Tough.
relapsed, and I didn't know he had like a history.
Mm.
So yeah.
So you had two major losses kind of close to each other.
And
Yeah.
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 But I do see, like, I've learned something from each death, and then my dad just passed in February in 2024, and,
Mm.
I've gained so much experience through it and learned all the tools and, it's still, of course, heartbreaking and hard, but I've really learned to navigate it in a different way, and that's been so supportive, and so it's inspired my work now to help others do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And why do we all carry some kind of grief. So, um, why do you think it's so difficult for us to really sit or address the grief in our lives? I mean, me personally, my mom left when I was one, and I held this deep grief inside of me for decades, and I never started to address it until I was on the medicine path,
Mhm,
and I didn't feel like I was consciously suppressing the grief, but I definitely was, you
mhm,
know? And I just wonder how you think about that, how you think about how most of us move through life without acknowledging it.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I feel like our society definitely doesn't make it easy for us to process it. So I
yeah,
can't go back to work immediately. I remember when I would bring it up, people would shun me kind of, like, people did not know how to respond, and so they'd kind of just, like, get awkward and turn away, and then I'd carry it so much more heavy, and so it's like, we're not really taught that
Mm.
it's part of life and the tools to process it, and so I would avoid going out, I completely isolated because I just felt like something was wrong with me because I didn't know that I was grieving, and no one knew how to hold space for me, not even my parents at the time, and it's and like loss. And since there is not really a language for it, it's just kind of hush hush. And I think because people are afraid to feel their emotions, like because it brings up your raw emotions. You can just start crying at a song, in the mall or something.
Yeah, I tend to only cry, like, if I'm on a plane alone watching a sad movie, like, I that's where that's my safe place to
I
cry.
love that place as well. It's so great.
So good.
Love a
Maybe
good
that can be part of the grief practice. "Okay, we want you to take a flight from here to there, and
by
here are the
yourself.
movies."
The best.
I mean, what you said is so true, right? Because I think in my own case, um, so the grief was there and I suppressed the grief, but at the same time, I was suppressing any emotion
Mhm.
because I felt like if I let some emotions in, then I was giving the grief opportunity,
Yeah.
right? So you got it's not like you can just suppress the grief and then feel other emotions. You got to like suppress the whole the whole kit and caboodle, you know?
Totally. And that's
Yeah.
why, yeah, my dad was a doctor, and I wanted to be on an antidepressant after my boyfriend, because I thought it was cool, but that's because of
Yeah.
and so I did that, and then, of course, that makes it more challenging once you start to do the work, you start actually feeling everything fully, and, yeah, just we're afraid to touch it because it can be so sensitive, and you don't have the proper spaces to release it, and are not taught how to, so it just stays in a tight ball here, I feel like, and then
Mm,
it can crack at anything, and then we can react if it's not tended to, and that's
mm.
where all of the different mannerisms come through, like anger and however else it manifests when it's not being looked at and held.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So when you let's give people a feeling of what it's like to work with you, you know? Maybe we can use me as a guinea pig, and, yeah, like, yeah, just walk me through some of your techniques or questioning. Yeah, just have like a live role playing of what it would be like. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I still haven't felt ready to fully jump into this, 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I need to get another license," or like, "Cetera, more training, more training." But everyone keeps reminding me, it's like, "You've gone through it, you have the tools." And
You totally can do it.
so it's really become a part of, like, I've created, like, a little guide kind of root, rise, and bloom. And so, like, rooting is really getting to the root and sitting in the soil with your grief and feeling it all and invoking the feelings. And
Mm,
on that stage, it's creating playlists for your person and to feel and to move it and really getting to somatics in that section, and creating altars and just finding ways to allow yourself to be with it. I'm trying to incorporate how when I go to the jungle each year, trying to bring that here without the medicine so that you can really just get it all moving. Um,
mm,
and then the second portion is kind of integrating back into life with your death, learning like embodied tools, shifting your nutrition, like really learning how to tend to your physical, um, and integrate back in the world and receive community and support and really feeling comfortable in yourself being in the world. And then the bloom, not everyone wants to transform through their grief, and it's heavy. Not everyone will get there, but I've transformed and so much through mine. And so that last stage is to really help them really see the blessings and connect with their past loved ones and really find ways to still communicate and keep the love going while you're here and
Mm.
feeling the angelic support and understanding that you did receive an angel as well as you as them transforming, you have an angel with you and really learning to connect with them in that way. Because I think that's one of the magical things that we receive through death is an angel, and it can open us up in so many ways to the magic of life because of the death. So I'm really trying to help share that magic with others so that it helps. You do have your support. As hard as
I
it is,
love
it's
that.
still there.
Yeah, that's so I really love it. So root, second one was
Rise.
rise, and then bloom.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I really appreciate you bringing the altar in because I was allergic to an altar for most of my life. I was like,
Mm.
those are weird people with altars. And now if you come to my house, there's an altar in every room and every corner. And but just last year I put my ancestors on the altar, which and many of them are dead, including my mother. And it's such a powerful way to both move into the grief, but also remember, you know, like my mother gave me life and she's the reason I'm here. And if I'm going to offer gratitude to anyone, like she's it,
Yeah.
right? She's it. So I love that piece. And the other thing I was going to say about the angel, I can't remember the name of this woman, but she's famous for having a near death experience in the hospital. And then she went to the other side,
Mhm.
and she had a very complicated relationship with her father, and she met her father on the other side, and then she came back, and she had cancer, and she was healed after she came back. I mean, like instantaneous. It was such a beautiful story. But one of the things that she said that I'll always remember is that the people that have been most difficult in your waking life are actually the ones cheering on in the spirit world. They're the ones actually offering the deepest help as we continue to live in this body. And that's such a because I know so many people have had difficult relationships with their family members, and
Mhm.
they don't want to connect with them in the spirit world because they of that relationship they had here. But
Mhm.
then thinking about them as, you know, a spirit entity with a different demeanor and, as you said, like an angel. So, yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah, I just spoke with a channel recently, and she said my dad was telling her he's doing everything he can that he couldn't do while he was here. He knows he messed up here. He couldn't be here for you. And so he's doing everything he can now. And I feel that so strongly. And yeah, and I feel that deeply that that really does happen. And it's a hard thing. So many people are too afraid of the pain and to be close to them, so they keep it distant. A lot of people don't like talking about their past loved ones and stuffing it down and don't want to see photos or anything. And, I think there's so much medicine in connecting with them and our ancestors. They've walked it and they're here with us.
Yeah. That's the other thing I love about the traditions that you and I work in is their deep reverence for their ancestry.
Mm.
It's taught me a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about, do you think grief ever goes away?
It's funny. I think I keep seeing this, like the more I'm getting into the work, I'm seeing so much about grief. And I do notice I have a lot of different views than a lot of grief specialists, but I think I think you'll always hold, like, a soft spot for it, um, and I think we can always access that grief, but I also think that we can really grow with it and have it as a companion so that it
Mm,
doesn't look like it did 5 years before, 10 years before.
mm,
Um, like, I remember I think when we use the idea of Santa Claus, that's like an early stage of grief. It's like one thing that we thought was real and we held on to this thing and then it's gone. And then you
Santa
could,
Claus isn't real? What do
yeah,
you mean? Wait
he's
a
with
sec.
angels.
Wait a sec.
The angels hired him. He's with them now.
Nice.
But like that's a form of grief. And I think it's when you hold on to like the concept of it and so tightly and like my dad, like I've hold on to that and I could always feel like so sad and missing him, but I also feel so supported and I do feel him as an angel now. And so I'll feel my moments of sadness, but my grief doesn't go as heavy as it did. Who knows to say with my next death, with my dog, that's going to be a whole other one. But, but
Oh. Yeah, I mean, you think about our lives, it's just filled with either grief or opportunities for grief, around the corner.
Mhm.
Um, it feels to me like grief is such an important thing to have the skill set or learn the skill set to deal with. I mean, if you're not, then what's going on?
Completely consume you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, You know, Yeah, it's been my
Yeah.
greatest teacher. Like I am so grateful for my grief and it's just as much of life as like death and life are hand in hand and I've opened up so much through my grief and live differently completely through processing it and tending to it. And it's given me more
Yeah.
life.
What are some of the things that people do to avoid their grief?
Coping with substances definitely stuffing the name down, like not mentioning their person.
Mm,
Um, it can manifest in so many ways, and I think a grief kind of fortunately, grief meets you where you're at. I always say, like, it didn't create my insecurities, but it exposed them because I was just the loss illuminated everything in my life.
mm,
'Cause I was questioning everything in my life, so it made me look at everything. And if you don't look at it with eyes of wanting to support yourself and work through it, it can be so detrimental. Like, I have an addict brother. He was never able to process, and so he's living that life.
mm.
And you can overwork, you can just try to escape, just kind of like anything that we're avoiding, you'll find ways to avoid it.
Yeah.
um,
So imagine I'm in that state right now. I'm doing all the things and avoiding my grief. How, you know, how would you help me face the grief? Is it just about changing habits and behaviors and having a recognition that I'm doing what I'm doing?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. You can meet someone where they're at. If they're not wanting to change something, it's really difficult to help with that. But what came through is take you to nature and to
Mm,
try to bring someone into a space where they can just feel the expansiveness instead of living in their day-to-day tightness. And I
mm,
feel like going into nature and just I'll take my brother there and just seeing his eyes and like how it opens things up for him gives you a new sense of wonder, kind of just those little moments is finding the little baby steps each day to try to continue going, especially because grief can be so heavy to just get out of bed. And it's like finding one thing as you're deep in
mm,
it that will get you moving and
mm.
being gentle and accepting of where you're at on any given day, 'cause it's one of it rocks your entire being, and so
Yeah. And when do you think plant medicine might be right? In which stage of the process?
Mhm.
I would say all stages personally, but that you know me.
I know, that's hard to say because I kinda feel the same, and I still wonder, I'm like, "Is plant medicine for everyone?" But
Mm,
I know how much it's supported me, and I think seeing where the person's at, definitely, like depends if they're ready, you know, if they've heard of it and they're willing to face everything.
Mm,
I think the first stage is great, um, because the veil's so thin in ceremony and it's so yeah, and it helps release a lot of the heaviness. Um, but yeah, I would say at any stage, ideally the first, because you want to just get into it. Get
yeah. Get into the roots,
into
bring
the
in the
roots of
roots.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
but yeah, even if you, yeah, because it definitely helps the plants and it helps you access what you're not facing. Brings it right there for you to
mm.
learn and look at.
Yeah, and what about any other medicines like MDMA or Wachuma, right, which is a heart medicine? Are there any other medicines that you think are good for working with grief?
Mhm. I honestly I don't have too much experience in the other like, the ayahuasca found me in that that's where
That's where you stay. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I had that with Wachuma, and I loved it so much. I think I needed the ayahuasca, though, for a whole body, like,
Mm,
deep, deep cleanse and purge, because so much I'd stored for years and years, so I feel like that was great for me. Um, yeah, I did sit with Wachuma shortly after, and it was nice for me. I was just like, "Wow." Definitely heart opening. It's like, I'm not purging, I'm just
yeah, ayahuasca's if you choose an ayahuasca path, you there's a lot of courage and, um, yeah, it's a strong call for sure.
Yeah, that's so great.
But so good. Oh my god,
So
so good.
good.
I can't tell you how many ceremonies and, kind of in the beginning of my journey where, I was in a two-nighter and I'm in the first night and I'm like, "I'm never doing this again. I'm leaving in the morning. I'm not staying the second, this can't be good for anyone." And then, of course, I always stayed and I always changed my mind and that's part of the journey, right? That's part of the grief, I guess, of leaving, the fear and the resistance and the limiting beliefs that I can't do this, right?
Totally.
Um, yeah, I had that in a recent ceremony. They called for the second cup, and I was super deep. And I have one of my teachers says, "If you can crawl to the altar, you can take the second cup." So I said, "I can't do it. I can't do it." I was like, "Wait a sec. I'm, of course I can." Yeah, girl. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah,
Another
I mean, it's such a beautiful because I obviously do that in other areas of my life too, right?
mm,
It's just a reminder of, whether you say you can or whether you say you can't, you're right in both instances. So
mhm,
why not say you can in every instance?
yeah, and it translates to the rest of your life. I
Exactly. Yeah.
always have the moment in the jungle where I'm like, "What am I doing here? I should be in the doctor's office in America, like, why am I in the middle of the jungle? I'm like, what am I doing?" And then, of course, after I'm just like, "Oh."
You are in the doctor's office, a
I am
different one.
the doctor.
Yeah. What do you think about grief ceremonies? I did a grieve and what they call grieve and breathe ceremony, which was really beautiful.
Mm, beautiful. So powerful. I think community grief should a beautiful thing is grief being held in community. In so many cultures, that's how they honor and process grief. And I think 100% that's what such big medicine because being surrounded with people who can understand the depths that you're experiencing helps you feel a little more normal and um yeah, and you can receive tools and just hearing how others process and work through it. And breath is so powerful because we store our grief in our lungs. And so
Mm.
accessing that, um, I want to be sharing with movement and grief because dance has been my medicine through it. But even singing, I've noticed getting back into your voice and connecting your voice and your heart, I've noticed is really powerful. Um, but yeah, I haven't attended a grief ceremony ritual. but I actually am this month with a lady who holds space. So I'm really excited to dive in and
Yeah,
explore.
you'll love it. You'll absolutely love it. It was really powerful for me. I did
Oh,
it right after a Bobanzana diet, so it was like my heart was like, "Okay, here we go."
wow. Amazing. What
Yeah,
and I've heard and I've noticed for men, espec especially is, like, getting in their body after grief.
totally. Yeah, I mean, I think it's linked to that the emotional suppression. So in my journey, I had repressed so much of my emotion, and I repressed it into my body, right? Because like that's what I'm like, that's what I do because I'm a man, right? I'll put it in my muscles, like rah rah rah, here I go.
I get stronger.
Um, yeah, I just instead of like dealing with grief, I'll just work on my biceps, like that'll fix everything. It's so true. I just realized that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm a longtime surfer, and I think that has helped also. Surfing is much like dancing. You're dancing with the wave. So I love the idea of using somatic work with grief and thinking about it. Probably surfing saved my life all those years of not dealing with my grief, but then having surfing as this companion where I was kind of could feel my body and get into my body a little bit more. But absolutely, um, yeah, and it's all linked to the suppression of emotion because I'm sure about the body holds the score, right? That famous book,
Mhm,
um, and it's so true because when we suppress, well, like, where's it going to go? It's going to go somewhere in here.
mhm.
For me, it went or it goes into my stomach. I call it my trauma bucket. You know, um, it's my little bucket down here, and
No,
that affects di- digestion and whatever else. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
like, not my beer belly, my trauma bucket.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I stopped drinking, my stomach got smaller, obviously, but I was like, oh wait, there's still something in there. What is that? What's that little being in there?
It's the emotions you need to feel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, totally. I'm still working on that, and that's the other thing about, because I asked you if we always have grief, um, but it feels like a lifelong journey.
mhm, yeah. I definitely think you can always access it, and there's so many different things to grieve, and then one grief can trigger another, and my dad's grief brought up my 2 previous griefs and
Mm,
the compound grief. There's so many, and just where you're at when it happens too, you're a different person, and so you have to meet it where you are now.
yeah. What do you think about I'm in this course with Josh from the Emerald podcast called The Mythic Body. If you
Oh,
haven't heard of it, it's amazing. And he talks about in the tantric traditions the idea of giving grief up to a deity or giving grief like as a like something to eat for a deity, for like Kali, for example,
mhm,
like the goddess of the destroyer, the fierce goddess.
mhm,
And I've done this in ceremony and it's felt so good where I've been feeling really deep grief and I'm like, okay, I'm going to give up this grief as a offering
mhm,
to the goddess. Or I usually give it to Ganesh because he's kind of my guy. But I'm
mhm.
like, here you go, Ganesh. You got that big tummy. I'm gonna. Yeah.
Grief
Have
for
you ever?
change.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about that? Or yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I love that, and I think yeah, I think, like, having an altar and tending to it gives you is also, like, a physical way of placing it, kind of, and then I love that for Kali and Ganesh. I haven't really done that for a deity. I've been, like, put it to my angels, like, my angels. I really shifted into seeing them there as angels, and so
That's beautiful. Yeah.
but I love the idea of offering your grief and, I'll do it in the earth. and write notes to my dad sometimes and bury them and things like that.
Mm.
And I think it's very there's definitely medicine in that.
I love that. I love
Mm.
that, writing a note to a loved one and burying it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm, mm. Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
what else can you share about your work and grief, if you think of anything?
Yeah. I'd say, I mean, for grief, it feels it's something that we've all looked overlooked, kind of like I'm sure, like with your mom, you kind of just put it aside and you're just like, oh, yeah, it's life, but then that's what totally guided my life is my unprocessed grief. And there was definitely other things, but I think the root was the unprocessed grief. And so I think it's so important to really, our culture really want to shift that. And my brother and dad were both suicide and I struggled with my mental health and it's because I was in silence and shaming myself and I think just bringing more awareness and really giving ourselves the tools and spaces to feel um, will make ripples in the world. Really helps
Yeah.
or
Yeah. You also mentioned earlier that you at some point took antidepressants. Do you what's your view on that if someone is in deep grief? Do you think there's a moment where that can help, or you should, it's just another tool to bypass the grief? Well, yeah, what are your feelings?
from how I feel with it now is, everything anything can be medicine as long as it's medicine. So it's like, if it you need it for that moment and like my brother is an addict and I said at one point like heroin was his medicine. Like to for what he was
Mm,
working with, that was his medicine. But it's not a sustainable, healthy medicine that he should be doing. There's but it was his medicine for what he was
mm.
trying to fix. And so, my dad was a doctor and I grew up in that Western um, system fully. But it's also what took his life. And of being with nature, I'm like all natural is my approach. Medicine is in the plants and the earth and but I have so many friends on their medicines too and they're not fully ready to get off of it. And I think there's a time and place. And then ideally, we'd all be off of it and all, eating our medicine and approaching it that way. But yeah, it's a hard one for me to say because I do empathize and I know some people need certain things for their specific way of living. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody out there listening to this is taking those medications, I highly recommend trying ayahuasca as a next step to get closer to what you just described.
Mhm.
Of course, there's a whole protocol for, getting off of the antidepressants before doing any medicines like that. But yeah, it's a hard one. I had a girlfriend that was on antidepressants, and it just didn't feel like she was ever there.
Yeah,
It was like yeah, it was so weird. It was like there was this veil between us um, in
totally.
all moments. Yeah.
And it's to help with her depression, but it just needs to be met in another way. That's just numbing it. It's not meeting where her depression is and really tending to it. And that's the medicine is really seeing what it is. When I was depressed for years. Like I had struggled getting out of bed often and the medicine really shifted it. And now I do wake up excited every morning. And I wasn't there for many years, you know.
Mm,
So yeah.
yeah. That's a great reminder that wherever anyone is at, there's always an opportunity for change and growth. Like, mm, don't give up on yourself. Don't. There are people like you who can help shepherd them into a new way of seeing. And hopefully, if anybody's listening to this and is struggling, just know that people like Rose are there to get you to that other side, you know, get you to the the feeling that life is, I mean, life is so sacred, right?
Yeah.
Just to be in these bodies and to experience these feelings and to wake up every day is like such a gift, you know, like to have all of our limbs, you know, and like I sometimes I think about like just, oh my goodness, you know, it's like it's amazing. It's really it's amazing.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, where can people find you if they, you know, would like to reach out? Yeah.
Yeah, so my brand is Era of Bloom, and on Instagram at era.of.bloom, and then my website's erabloom.com.
What's the first word? E
Era,
era. Okay, maybe spell it for people.
ERA of
Got
bloom.com.
it.
Mhm.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, cool. And I'll put that in the show notes and so people can link straight to it and
Amazing.
get all the goodness. And please, if you are feeling the call, Rose is such a beautiful, amazing person. I've sat with her so many times and yeah, just love your energy and your heart,
Oh,
and your dance moves are always so appreciated. I can't wait to dance with you again on the dance floor of life
yeah.
and ceremony. And thank you so much for being here, Rose.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I'm here. Reach
Mhm.
out.
Thank you to Rose for that beautiful podcast. If anyone out there is struggling with grief or wants to explore their grief, I highly recommend working with Rose. She's such a beautiful being and she carries such presence and deep knowledge in her journey. Please hit the subscribe button if you feel called. Would love to take you along this journey. I hope you're well. I hope life is amazing. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Hausch, hausch.